Hello everyone, my name is Wilou, and in this video we're gonna have a look at how to recreate the sound of Avicii.
Hello there.
I actually have the biography right here. So yeah, this is gonna be us today. Now I wanna say that I will cover more the earlier days of Avicii, like the progressive house kind of era, and not so much the earlier albums which were more kind of poppy. So maybe I'll do a future video on this, but for now, we'll stick to progressive house. I think Avicii is kind of an emotional topic for a lot of producers because many people started making music because of Avicii and were inspired by him. Okay, now, so let's bring back at least a little bit of that Avicii feeling. So as always, I wanted to have some kind of foundation to build the track upon. So I started looking for some vocals, and it's really hard to find vocals that sound like Avicii vocals because he had just such great access to amazing top liners and singers, but we don't have to aim for absolute perfection here. So I found this vocal.
I don't know where to take this. I don't want to break this. We're living in the moment. We're living in the moment.
I pitched it up by 3 semitones.
I don't know where to take this.
And because it sounded a little bit harsh on its own, I added a deesser.
I don't know where to take this.
This Soothe plugin, which kind of smoothens all the harsh frequencies.
I don't know where to take this.
I added a little bit of reverb.
I don't know where to take this.
And this low cut here. So now that I had this foundation going, I added some chords to accompany it. I found that Avicii almost always used either a piano or a guitar or both. So that's what I did here. And he also used a lot of sounds from the Nexus plugin, which is just a sample library with a lot of sounds that became quite popular because many famous artists like Avicii used them. So the chords consist out of these 3 layers: the main piano, this metallic layer, and a soft piano. Because we are still in the intro of the track, I added also this filter here to make space for the vocals. Quite some heavy compression. This sidechain is for later for the kick. And I also added this multi-band compression here. So what this is doing is it's sidechaining the chords to the vocals. So always when the vocals are playing, this frequency band here is going to be ducked a little bit like this.
Don't know where to take this. I don't want to break this. We're living in the moment. We're living in the moment.
Next, I added these guitars here. They consist out of 2 layers, and both layers use this Contact library here. Strummed acoustic. As far as processing goes, I added some compression. I added a little bit more of that air by boosting the stereo signal and adding some saturation here. The same applies to the second layer, just that the rhythm is a little bit different here. And on the group channel, there isn't much going on except for some side chaining and again this multiband compression to the vocal. The chords together with the vocals sound like this.
Don't wanna take this, I don't wanna break this. We're living in the moment.
Last thing I added here was this crash and this very iconic sound, a reversed piano. So the way you can create this is by just adding a lot of reverb on your piano and then reversing the whole thing. Altogether it sounds like this.
I don't wanna take this, I don't wanna break this. We're living in the moment, we're living in the moment.
A little bit about that chord progression here. So I'm in the key of C major and I'm using a 4-1-6-5 chord progression. And to make it a little bit more interesting, I added these stepping notes here. So they always lead into the next chord and they just make it a little bit more interesting. At the end of the first part of the intro, I added this ARP here, which is slowly being filtered in. And this sweep. And now in the second part of the intro, the bass starts playing now. And this is the same bass that we are going to use in the drop. It's just a little bit low cut here. For the chords, I added this string layer in the second part. And the vocals also get a little bit fuller. I added some more layers to it. The first one is this chorus layer here. Just to get a little bit more of that width. Another layer is this reverb here. And I'm just picking certain parts of the vocal to add the reverb to. This sample also came with 2 harmonies, so I just panned them left and right and added them. They sound a little bit weird on its own, but it makes sense in the full mix. Now some drum elements also come into the arrangement. First one is the kick, some percussion, and these claps here, which are basically following the rhythm of the percussion. So I just added some reverb to these claps and I panned them slightly, at least this layer here. Together with the same crash from before, it sounds like this.
Baby, it's you and I. Yeah, we're stars in the sky. Oh.
Note that I'm always sidechaining all these elements like the chords, the bass and the lead to the kick, just to create some more room for the kick. At the end of the intro, we have this transition here.
Yeah, we're stars in the sky.
I found that Avicii uses a lot of white noise and these little sweeps and swoops for his transitions. So I added these effects here. I also left out the kick in the last bar of the intro. Next, I added a delay to the vocal. And this little vocal effect, which also came with a pack. Here I'm again adding a delay just for the ARP. And I'm filtering in the strings a little bit to create that little crescendo. Together it sounds like this. Now what's interesting about the start of the build-up is that I'm not continuing the chord progression, but I'm actually repeating the first chord of the progression 2 times, like this. And now it starts. As you've already heard, I'm filtering in this guitar. And then after 2 bars, the actual build-up starts. And I found that Avicii had quite long build-ups and also quite long melodies. So our build-up is this part here, and it starts by playing all the chords from before. So the chords are slowly being filtered in, and I have a little bit of a different rhythm now. This creates more movement and more tension. The guitar is of course playing as well. No automation here. I'm adding these drop claps here, which just add a very nice sense of rhythm and also fill up the mix. And you've probably already been waiting for this, the lead. So Avicii's music is really all about the melody. It's the main element of his song, always, and his melodies are super on point. So I kind of tried to recreate that. I'm not sure how well I did, but I found some interesting stuff. I found that the melody isn't just the lead on its own, but it's the interaction with the chords. So of course you have to have a nice melody, but they also have to fit together with the chords. Before I continue now with all the lead layers and stuff, I want to explain the melody a little bit. So I'm not a musical theorist by any means, but I will try my best to explain this melody a little bit. So the melody is actually quite simple and repetitive. So we've got these two parts of the melody, and there's this pattern. That basically defines the character of the melody. So in the first part of the melody, there's this pattern, and in the second part of the melody, there's this pattern as well. At the end of each part, there are some little variations. So let's have a look at the first one. I found that Avicii actually used a lot of trills, and this is exactly what I'm doing here. And I included this note in the trill, which is actually not a part of the C major scale, but it really changes the character of the sound and makes it quite interesting in my opinion. The last section of the second part sounds like this. And you can already tell before the melody was going down and now it's going up. And then at the end, there's again a little trill. The last aspect of this melody is the rhythm. So a melody always has a rhythm, and the rhythm, especially in dance music, is really, really important. As you can tell, these notes here are not straight on the grid, but are a little bit syncopated. Now, as the melody progresses, I actually changed that up a little bit so that the notes actually are being played on the grid here. And I did that because I felt that with a 4 to the floor kick, it fits better to the rhythm. And I also think that rhythmic variation in the build-up is quite nice and interesting. But enough of the theory now, let's continue with the track. So as the lead is slowly being filtered in here, I'm also filtering in the chords. And I've added this snare which is being pitched up. And last but not least, I'm adding these riser effects. And just before the second part of the build-up, I added this micro transition here. All that's happening here is I'm changing the chords a little bit. So I'm going down with the chords. Just to emphasize that there's something new about to happen. Before the drop, there is, as always, a transition. So let's have a listen to that. So what's happening with the melody is that I'm just soloing the main melody like this. At the same time, I'm adding a low cut to the master channel. And I found that Avicii used this technique a lot for his transitions. I also automated the volume a little bit so that it decreases during the build-up and then jumps back to its original state at the drop. This creates this illusion of a more powerful drop. And for the transition, I really wanted the melody to be the only element that's playing, so I cut out all of the chords. I added this reversed piano again, and this fill. Altogether, it sounds like this. The drop is pretty straightforward. Now all the elements we created before come together. So we've got the lead with all its layers. So we've got the main lead from before, a second main layer, this noise layer, again the white detuned layer, again the plug layer, and also this little filler layer here, which are just these two oscillators with an LFO on their fine detune. On the lead bus, I added some saturation, some compression, and EQ, and some reverb. And as you can already hear, I am actually sidechaining the reverb of the lead to the lead itself, so that when the lead is playing, the reverb is very low in volume, but when it stops playing, it comes up and kind of fills that space, like this. So you can hear at the end, the volume of the reverb increases. So a good kick is really important for this kind of music. I've got this kick here, and I created it by layering different kicks and clicks. So the individual layers sound like this. Together with these claps, a clap, and these offbeat hi-hats, which are also quite a signature sound for Avicii songs. The bass consists of two layers. The first one we've already heard in the intro. And the second layer is just a top layer to add some more beefiness. The chords in the drop are also the same as before, just the rhythm is a little bit different, and I added an extra layer, which is this super saw layer here. And all together it sounds like this. The guitar is also the same as before. The only thing I changed here or added here was this percussion here. So you can already hear that this is a part of the full guitar pattern. But I wanted to emphasize this part a little bit more, and I also wanted to put it on the offbeat here so that it plays together with the offbeat hat. Last but not least, the effects for the drop. So you can already tell that these effects are basically just a lot of white noise, and it continues throughout the whole track. So this is also quite important to fill up all these spaces that are still left just with some white noise. The second part of the drop is basically the same as the first part, just that the melody, the main melody here, is being played one octave higher, like this. And before it was like this. And I created this little transition here where the main lead is actually going up as the other layers go down. Together it sounds like this. So the main layer is going up and it stays on top for the second part of the drop, and the other layers are just repeating the same pattern as before. In the context of the full drop, it sounds like this. And that's basically it. So let's have a listen to the full result now.
I don't want to take this, I don't want to break this. We're living in the moment, we're living in the moment. Your head is on my shoulder, we're never getting older. Baby, it's you and I. Yeah, we're stars in the sky. Oh, you and I. Yeah, we're stars in the sky.
And that's again it for the video. Thank you very much for watching. I think the most important element here is really the melody. It took me like way too long to create this very simple melody, but I think in the end it was kind of worth it because it's such a crucial part of the song, right? So let me know what you think of the video, and if you have any ideas on future videos I could make, just drop them in the comments. If you want to help me build this community even more, consider liking or subscribing. And that's it for now. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.